When it comes to data, we're all looking for the same thing: clean, reliable insights. But there's this one crucial piece of the puzzle that's often overlooked, and honestly, it's the secret ingredient that makes the whole thing work. It's called the staging area. So let's dive in and find out why this unsung hero is so incredibly important. So let me just ask you this. Why is it so ridiculously hard to get good, reliable data? I mean, it's a challenge every single data professional runs into. You've got data pouring in from everywhere in all these different formats, and you're the one who has to make sense of it. Well, a lot of the time, the problem is trying to connect directly to all your live systems. It's a true recipe for disaster. And that's what we call the data dilemma. Just imagine you're trying to cook a five-star meal. But instead of a nice, organized kitchen, you have to run out to a dozen different gardens, grab whatever you can find, and just throw it all straight into the pot. That is exactly what it's like when you try to query multiple live systems directly. It is a recipe for total chaos. Okay, so take a look at this. This is the old way of doing things. You've got all your data sources, operational systems, random files, all just feeding right into the warehouse. And yeah, it might look simple on paper, but in reality, this direct connection is a tangled mess. It puts a massive strain on your source systems, and for anyone trying to actually get answers, it's just slow and frustrating. So how do we fix this mess? Well, that's where the staging area comes in. The best way to think about it is like a professional prep kitchen for your data. It's this dedicated, separate space where you can get all your raw ingredients, your data, cleaned up and ready to go before they ever hit the main dish, which is your data warehouse. And wow, this picture just shows the difference so clearly, right? See that step in the middle? That's the staging area. It intercepts everything from all those different sources. And here, the data can be pulled out, cleaned up, and transformed, all without messing with the original systems. The result? A clean, orderly flow of high-quality data into the warehouse, ready for analysis. It's an architecture that's built for stability, for scale, and, most importantly, for data you can actually trust. Okay, so we've seen the before and after, but let's get really specific. Why exactly does that old direct access way fail so badly? Well, it really boils down to four big headaches that a staging area is specifically designed to cure. First up, performance. When you're trying to run queries across a bunch of different servers and networks, everything just grinds to a halt. It creates a ton of latency, and your performance is completely unpredictable. And second, there are major security risks. Every single direct connection to a source system is another door you've left open, which dramatically increases the chances of a security breach. The third headache, compliance. We've all got regulations to deal with, like GDPR in Europe for data privacy or HIPAA in the US for healthcare. Trying to audit and protect sensitive data across a dozen live systems, that's just a compliance nightmare waiting to happen. And finally, sometimes it's just flat out impossible from a technical standpoint. You simply can't join data directly from an old legacy database, a CSV file, and a modern API. It just doesn't work. All right, enough about the problems. Let's talk about the good stuff. What's the real payoff here? This is where the magic really happens, and you start to see the huge rewards of having a good, solid architecture. The benefits are just huge. First off, you completely separate your day-to-day business operations from all that heavy analytical work, so they don't slow each other down. You can easily handle data that shows up late, which makes your final reports way more complete and consistent. Troubleshooting becomes so much easier because you have one central place to check everything. And get this, in a crisis, it can even act as a temporary backup if one of your source systems goes down. So, we're sold on the why, right? The value is pretty clear. But what about the how? How do you actually get the data into the staging area? Well, it turns out there are a few common ways to do it, and each one has its own pros and cons. This table gives us a really nice high-level breakdown. You've got the publisher-subscriber model, which gives you really fine-grained control. Then there's mirroring, which just copies the entire database. It's simple, but it's a heavy lift on your resources. And finally, you've got log-based replication, which also copies the whole database, but in a way that has a much lower impact on your original server. Let's zoom in on that publisher-subscriber model for a second. This one is all about precision. You can see here how it lets you basically subscribe to changes in very specific tables or even individual rows or columns. It's perfect when you only need a small piece of the data from a source system and you want to be super efficient about it. Now, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you've got mirroring. This is a much broader approach. As you can see, it just creates an exact one-to-one copy of an entire database. It's pretty straightforward and comprehensive, but yeah, it's going to take some serious resources to keep that full replica running. But look, just picking a technique is only one piece of the puzzle. A staging area is not a set it and forget it kind of deal. If you really want to build a solid foundation for your data, especially when you're dealing with high volumes, you've got to do some careful planning around your infrastructure. On this slide really lays out the key things you need to think about. Disk space is a big one. You have to plan for huge datasets well in advance. You absolutely need an archival process to move older data out so you can keep things running smoothly. And hey, here's a plus. Since the staging area isn't the original source of truth, you can often get away with less frequent backups, which can actually save you some money. So at the end of the day, it all comes back to this idea of a foundation. A staging area is so much more than just a technical box in a diagram. It's the very foundation that holds up your entire data warehouse. It's that prep kitchen that makes sure every single report, every insight, is made from the best possible ingredients. So, take a hard look at your own systems and ask yourself, is your data built on a solid foundation?